Fellow Handmaid's Tale fanatics, we need to talk about what's happening next in Gilead. The main series just wrapped its 6-season run with that emotionally devastating finale, but Hulu is already deep into production on something that's going to completely blow our minds. The Testaments isn't just another spin-off. This is Margaret Atwood's official sequel, and showrunner Bruce Miller just gave us the perfect way to describe it. Mean Girls Growing Up Gilead. I am so ready to unpack what that means and everything else we know about this series that's literally filming right now in Toronto. If you thought June's journey was intense, wait until you hear what's coming for the daughters of Gilead who have never known anything else. This is going to be absolutely insane. Let's get our bearings after that finale because, wow, what is set up for the Testaments? The Handmaid's Tale ended with Boston liberated, but here's the thing. This wasn't just a happy ending. It was a carefully engineered launching pad for the sequel. The bombing of that plane filled with Gilead commanders created a massive power vacuum at the top of the regime, and that chaos is going to be absolutely crucial for what happens next. June finally made it to free Boston and got those emotional reunions we were craving, but her story is deliberately unfinished. She's heading to Colorado to find Hannah, who's been moved to Washington, D.C. with the surviving commanders. And here's what's brilliant about this setup. We're getting a completely different perspective on Gilead than we've ever seen before. June showed us this world through the eyes of someone who remembered freedom, but the Testaments is going to flip that entirely. We're going to see Gilead through the eyes of young women who grew up in this nightmare and think it's normal. The finale also set up Aunt Lydia's story in this fascinating way. She's been condemned as a traitor for helping the handmaids escape, but we know from the book that she becomes this powerful figure again, a glimpse of which we saw in the final episode. How does someone go from death row to having a statue built in their honor? That transition is going to be one of the most compelling mysteries of the new series. Here's what we know for absolute certain about the Testaments production, and honestly, the details are getting me so hyped. Filming started on April 2025 in Toronto, the same locations that gave us that iconic Gilead aesthetic we all know and love. Bruce Miller stepped down from running the final season of The Handmaid's Tale specifically to focus all his attention on this sequel, which tells you everything about how seriously they're taking this project. The cast announcements have been absolutely perfect. Ann Dowd is back as Aunt Lydia, and I cannot imagine this story without her Emmy-winning brilliance. Chase, who you might know from Presumed Innocent, is playing Agnes. That's Hannah, June's daughter who was taken all those years ago. And Lucy Holiday is playing Daisy, who we know is actually Nicole, June's younger daughter. But here's where it gets really interesting. The supporting cast is massive and gives us huge clues about the world we're entering. Rowan Blanchard is playing Shunammite, described as a pampered teen from a prominent Gilead family. We're getting multiple aunts, including Mabel Lee as Aunt Vidala, who sounds like she's going to be Lydia's main rival. Amy Seimetz is playing Paula, Agnes's potentially evil stepmother. This isn't just a 3-person story. We're getting a full ensemble that's going to show us every level of Gilead society. The timeline is targeting a 2026 premiere, maybe early 2027, which feels both forever away and not nearly enough time to wait. They're clearly taking their time to get this right, and honestly, after seeing what they accomplished with The Handmaid's Tale, I trust them completely with this timeline. What's absolutely fascinating about The Testaments is that this isn't just a sequel. It's part of what the producers are calling a 10-year plan for the Gilead universe. They've been developing this since 2019, working in coordination with Margaret Atwood while she was actually writing the book. This level of planning and world building is incredible to see in television. Elisabeth Moss is confirmed as an executive producer, which means she has significant creative influence even if her on-screen involvement remains this tantalizing mystery. And when asked about potentially appearing, she's been deliciously coy, saying she'd totally lie if she was returning. That kind of answer just makes me think she's definitely going to show up at some point. The aesthetic is going to be completely different from what we're used to. Executive producer Warren Littlefield described it as pastoral, beautiful, with different architecture and a different color palette. Instead of the oppressive, desaturated world we saw through June's eyes, we're going to see the seductive, beautiful surface of elite Gilead society. Set photos have already shown girls in those plum dresses that the book describes, the uniforms of Gilead's most privileged daughters. Now let's get into the really juicy speculation territory, because there are some major mysteries that fans are trying to solve. The biggest question is how they're handling the timeline. In Margaret Atwood's novel, The Testaments takes place 15 years after The Handmaid's Tale, but the TV series is only jumping ahead 4 to 5 years. That might not sound like a huge change, but it completely transforms the story. Here's why this matters so much. In the book, Nicole is a teenager who doesn't know she's the famous baby Nicole. But with only a 4 to 5 year jump, she'd still be a little kid. So how are they solving this? The most compelling theory is that she'll know exactly who she is, but the alias Daisy becomes about protection, not secrecy. Instead of a mystery about identity, we get a thriller about a girl who's in constant danger because of who her parents are. The Agnes storyline is going to be absolutely heartbreaking. She's been raised as the daughter of a commander, completely indoctrinated into Gilead's beliefs, and she has no idea that her real mother is June Osborne, Gilead's most wanted rebel. Chase Infinity is going to have to portray this incredibly complex internal journey as Agnes slowly awakens to the truth about her world and herself. And then there's the Aunt Lydia situation, which is honestly the most fascinating puzzle of all. The Handmaid's Tale finale leaves her condemned as a traitor, but The Testaments begins as this powerful, revered figure. The leading fan theory is that she's going to exploit the chaos from the commander bombing to completely rewrite history. Since all the men who condemned her are now dead, she can frame them as the real traitors and position herself as the loyalist who was trying to expose their corruption. Industry and production context. From a business perspective, what Hulu and MGM are doing here is really smart and honestly pretty unprecedented in television. They're not just making a spin-off, they're building a sustained fictional universe with a long-term content strategy. The fact that they had a 10-year plan as early as 2019 shows this level of coordination and world-building that you usually only see in major film franchises. The production team is using the working title Dollhouse during filming, which is such a perfect metaphor for what this story is about. These girls who are being shaped and controlled like dolls, groomed for roles they never chose. The thematic resonance of that title tells us so much about the psychological focus of this new series. Bruce Miller stepping away from The Handmaid's Tale to focus entirely on The Testaments signals how much creative energy and resources are being dedicated to getting this right. They're not treating this as a cash grab or afterthought. This is getting the full attention it deserves, with the same level of creative talent and production values that made the original series such a cultural phenomenon. What I'm most excited about. I am absolutely losing my mind thinking about the psychological complexity we're going to see in The Testaments. The phrase, mean girls growing up Gilead, perfectly captures what makes this so terrifying and compelling. We're going to see teenage social dynamics playing out within a totalitarian regime. These girls are competing for status and approval within a system that fundamentally devalues them. And that contradiction is going to create such rich, complex storytelling. Ann Dowd returning as Aunt Lydia has me so excited because her character is going to be even more central to this story. She's described her preparation by narrating the audiobook for The Testaments, which gave her this incredible insight into Lydia's internal monologue. She talks about Lydia's blinders coming down and this wonderful progression into herself, which suggests we're going to see layers of this character that we never imagined. The coming-of-age aspect is going to be devastating in the best possible way. These young women have been told their entire lives that their world is normal and good, and watching them slowly wake up to the reality of their situation is going to be incredible television. Agnes discovering that her beloved adoptive father is actually her kidnapper, Daisy learning that her entire identity has been constructed to protect her from a regime that wants her dead, these revelations are going to hit like emotional freight trains. Concerns and hopes. My biggest concern is honestly the pressure this series is going to be under. The Handmaid's Tale sets such a high bar for cultural impact and storytelling quality that The Testaments is going to be compared to it constantly. I really hope they resist the urge to just recreate what worked before and instead lean into the completely different energy and perspective the story brings. I'm also slightly worried about how they'll handle the violence and trauma with younger characters at the center. The original series was sometimes criticized for being almost too brutal to watch. And with teenage protagonists, they're going to have to find that balance between showing the reality of this world and not exploiting young characters for shock value. But my hopes far outweigh my concerns. I hope they really dig into the class dynamics within Gilead that we never got to see before. I hope they explore how resistance and rebellion look different when you're 17 and have been indoctrinating your entire life. And I really, really hope they give us those emotional payoffs we're craving, especially around the relationship between June and her daughters. The potential for Elisabeth Moss to appear, even briefly, adds this layer of anticipation that I think could be incredibly powerful if handled right. A reunion between June and Hannah, even if it's just a single scene, could be one of the most emotionally devastating moments in television. Fellow Handmaid's Tale obsessives, I need to hear all your theories about the Testaments. Do you think the timeline compression is going to work, or are you worried about how they're adapting the book? Are you team Elisabeth Moss will definitely cameo, or team she's staying behind the camera? And what are you most hoping to see from Agnes and Daisy's story? The wait until 2026 is going to be absolutely brutal, but based on everything we know so far, The Testaments is shaping up to be a worthy continuation of a story that has meant so much to all of us. This next generation of resistance fighters is going to show us sides of Gilead we never imagined, and I cannot wait to experience their journey together when it finally arrives.